In this video, I basically want to go over the supplies I use to teach drawing for the impatient at Scottsdale Artist School. I start with charcoal, loose powdered charcoal. They've got many brands. I use Generals, and I put it into a spice jar with holes in it or a salt shaker. And that way it's easily distributed. I pre-tone my paper before I begin a drawing. Often, don't always, but that's what I would use to do so. I use willow charcoal in broken pieces. I use variable sizes. I break them to about 1/2 inch. I rarely use the points or the ends. I usually use them on the side plane, like this, to develop a drawing before I go in and do this. And the reason is that will tear up your paper. This will give you tone. And I save my lines and my line drawing until the very end. Once I know I have my values and my structure down, then I will pull out sharp pencils and know that when I place that mark on the paper, it's going where it needs to go and it's not being guessed at. I don't want to correct. So I block in with charcoal on its side plane. When I do go in with a pencil towards the end, I will use Generals, either 2B, 6B, and I rarely use them really sharp because, again, it tears up the paper. I like to be able to correct if I need to. I really don't even like to do that. So I also use the Conti by Paris for the darks, really darks. Charcoal, you'll learn, is you can apply it. It looks dark. You can lift it off the paper, and it shockingly goes back to white really easy, which is why I choose it to teach beginning drawing. So people know, students know, that they can correct pretty much any mistake. I use a white pencil. Every now and then I'll use highlights in an eye, something like that, or maybe a highlight on a cheek. It just depends. I rarely use them. You can tell it's almost new. Anyway, and then I use compressed charcoal for my darkest, blackest darks. They've got variable brands. Look how easily it comes off on my fingers. And marks on the paper, or actually the styrofoam board, but it pretty much covers your darks for you after you've set the charcoal into the paper. It floats fairly loosely. The regular charcoal, willow charcoal, will float loosely over the paper, and then you have to press it into the paper to get it to stay. So we use stumps to do that. Oftentimes, stumps or Viva paper towels. I like Viva paper towels that don't have the texture on them. I like the smooth finish, but they're my go-to. I do like chamois, but I don't know. I just like these. When they get dirty, I throw them away. I like that. Kneaded erasers. I also draw with a kneaded eraser, and I don't even want to forget, I do draw. I lift charcoal off with the point and the side planes of these. I rarely use the point for point's sake. I turn it on its side plane and use this side plane to press into the paper, and I either am lifting up, pulling away, or I'm side to side, fanning it over charcoal in the shadows to set the charcoal into the paper. Oftentimes I'll leave one side of it light, the other side of it dirty, so I know that I want to use the light side for lifting. I also have a click pen eraser for serious highlights. Just like the pencils, I save these tools for the very last lights. I don't go straight in with this for a lift. I usually first lift the lightest plane with my finger and keep wiping my finger as I lift, and I can control the pressure that I use with my finger. And that way I can lift for a halftone, I can lift for a fairly center light plane, or I can go in and lift with an eraser or a kneaded eraser. I like kneaded erasers also for texture. I can fold them, stretch them, make them lumpy and bumpy, and give the feeling of having weave or print on a shirt. These are, or a hat. These do great for giving the weave of a basket or grass in the yard, or the texture of leaves on trees, things like that. These are great for. They start out really nice and gray. The longer you use them, they turn black. And when they get too dirty and they can't lift, I'll throw them away. But a lot of times when they do get dirty, I use those to do reflected lights in the shadows. Instead of using the cleanest eraser and the lightest lift, I'll use the dirty eraser covered in charcoal, and I'll go in and lift my reflected lights for the lighter lifts once I've set my shadows in, and I need just that little bit of accent light that comes bouncing off of something in the out of peripheral vision or something around that's bouncing light back up into the darks, I'll use a charcoal covered dirty eraser and it won't lift quite so much. I use clamps, book clamps like this to hold my paper still and steady. I don't like tape that much, but it doesn't matter. It's up to you. You can use whatever you want to hold your paper down. I like Grumbacher Final Fixative if I do spray a drawing, which I almost pretty much always do. So I use this for the final, and then I'll use the Workable Fixative, which I forgot to put out, but there's several brands of it. And last but not least, Bee Paper Company is my Aqua Bee paper. It's just my go-to paper. I like it. It's got a nice weight to it, I believe. I'll use paper that has about a 90-pound or more. I do not like thin sheets of paper. I do like watercolor paper, but the model on them and the texture on them is a bit rough. You have to pick a certain type of drawing to do on watercolor paper, especially the rougher textures. I have done it on there before. I have them actually hanging in the school. They were challenging. I don't like to spend 80 hours on a drawing just because I have to feel the porosity of the model on the paper with a really tiny pencil lead to get it even in texture. I like the dramatic gestural drawings. That's what I like to finish with, and my approach is for that purpose. I don't do highly technical, overly done, not overly done, I admire that. I just am too impatient. I help teach drawing for the impatient.